Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to give you a very warm welcome to our evening's online technical session that's been brought to you by SPE Kenya section. The SPE Kenya section, SPE International actually, is the largest individual member organization serving engineers, scientists, managers, and other professionals worldwide in the oil and gas industry. So we're global with over 127,000 members, 15 regions, 145 countries, and we've had over 100 events. Our mission is to connect a global community of engineers, scientists, and other related energy professionals, as well as exchange knowledge, innovate, and advance technical and professional competence to achieve a safe, secure, and sustainable energy future. So my name is Chantal Omondi, and I'm representing the Society of Petroleum Engineers Kenya section as the student chapter liaison. I'd like to just briefly welcome you all to our technical session today. So our theme for tonight, policy reforms for enhanced safety, environmental stewardship, and local content, sits at the very heart of a sustainable and prosperous energy future for Kenya and the wider region globally. So as our industry continues to evolve, the frameworks that are guiding us must also be able to adapt. So not only are we able to unlock economic potential, but we should be able to ensure that we operate with an unwavering commitment to the safety of our people, for the protection of our environment, and the meaningful participation of our local communities and enterprises. So tonight, we're privileged to have distinguished speakers. Engineer Edward Kinyua, the Director, Petroleum and Gas at the the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority in Kenya. He's an accomplished engineer with deep expertise in the energy sector who will be able to bring us a unique, technically grounded perspective to policy reform, making him a leading voice on how to effectively operationalize our sustainable energy policies. Then we also have Dr. Riverson Opong, who's the CEO of Chambers of Oil Marketing Company, COMAC. He's also the regional director of the Society of Petroleum Engineers Africa region. He's a seasoned petroleum engineer and subsurface manager with a proven track record in driving operational success. So Dr. Opong's perspective is essential for understanding how policy reforms are implemented at the technical operational level. And now, without further ado, I'd like to hand over to our moderator, Stephen Waweru, who's also representing us from SPE Kenya section to be able to begin the session. Welcome, everyone. Now let's begin.
A great thank you to everyone who has managed to join. Welcome to today's technical session. And today we're going to debate, or rather discuss, the major aspect of what forms the policies in oil and gas. So we are privileged today to have Engineer Kinyua, who sits at one of the regulatory body in Kenya, and actually that is representing the regulatory body in Kenya, and also Riverson Opong, Dr. Riverson Opong, who is our SP Africa region coordinator, and also a chair from Commerce. Thank you all. As we begin, I would love Dr. Engineer Kinyua to kindly give us an overview of petroleum and gas industry in Kenya, and also the policies that are in place to ensure that the energy sector in Kenya is thriving, because we've seen that currently we have the ongoing debates or rather public participation that are currently held by the organization that is EPRA. So Dr. Engineer Kinyua, if you can give us an overview of the policies that makes up the energy industry in Kenya.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you, Chantel, and thank you, Dr. Pong, and thank you, participants. Good evening. As you've heard, my name is Engineer Edward Kinyua. I lead the technical regulation of the petroleum subsector in Kenya. I work for the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority, which basically does the technical and economic regulation of the energy sector and also the petroleum subsector. We've been there since the year 2006. Of course, previously, before year 2006, we were existing as a electricity regulatory board, which was established sometimes back in 1998, and it was basically dealing with economic and technical regulation of the electricity subsector. Then somewhere in 2004, there's a session paper that was done on energy, which basically recommended that we needed to bring on board the other sectors of energy, that is petroleum and renewable energy. So that gave birth to the Energy Act 206, which basically brought us on board. But I think in 2006, when we were established, we were basically doing mid and downstream petroleum regulation. I personally joined the regulator in the year 2010, that is 1st of February 2010, and joined in as a technical officer. And basically, what we were doing is we were doing technical regulation of mid and downstream petroleum subsector. That time we had a refinery. Of course, we were looking at the entire uh, downstream sector, from importation of crude, refining, storage, transportation, and then of course downstream trading of that product, meaning gas stations and also the other retail sites for LPG. And then somewhere in 2019, we had the new laws which were basically enacted. There was a revision of the Energy Act 206, which now became the Energy Act 2019, which is a CAP 314. And previously, we were known as the Energy Regulatory Commission. That changed to Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority, which you basically know as EPRA. And I think the change brought in the aspect of an additional mandate of regulating the upstream sector. So the upstream sector has traditionally been regulated, so to speak, by policy, who is the Ministry of Energy and Petroleum. That is a minister who was basically in charge of petroleum. It has been evolving from the yesteryears. We used to have the Ministry of Energy, and then somehow the word petroleum was added. And then sometimes in the last administration, we had the Ministry of Petroleum and Mining. Now we are back to the Ministry of Energy and Petroleum. The reason I'm giving that history is because I needed to give like a brief of where the regulation of the petroleum upstream sector has come since we started doing drilling in terms of exploration drilling of the blocks that we have in Kenya. So the ministry basically sets policy, and from the act that we have of 2019, then the aspect of regulation has been delegated to us as the regulator in charge of the sector. So basically to undertake technical and economic regulation. So from the act of parliament, because of course once parliament makes a law, then it is signed by the president, it becomes an act of parliament. Then is what we call the subsidiary legislation, which we make just to give life to the act. Normally, the act will have a line, for example, that the contractors in the sector are supposed to comply with environment, health, and safety guidelines which have been issued by the regulator. That is just a line. So we have to develop detailed subsidiary legislation to explain what sort of guidelines are those, or basically just to expound so that the players in the sector can be able to understand what are these do's and don'ts that they need to be basically abide by. So, as you've heard Stephen say, we've recently developed 7 draft regulations, and these regulations are basically on upstream petroleum operations. We have one on rights administration. Basically, that deals with the aspect of issuance of licenses and the way the blocks are to be allocated. So, just giving a history, we previously had 63 blocks. We have 4 sedimentary basins. I know most of you are versed with geology, and geologists will tell you that petroleum is usually formed in sedimentary basins. So the country Kenya, with an area of 582,000 square kilometers, is divided into 4 sedimentary basins. So we have the Lamu Basin. The Lamu Basin basically has offshore and onshore, and it has about 29 blocks which have been delimited. It's the minister who delimits these blocks. Of course, he works with the Survey of Kenya and other, like the Kenya International Boundary Office, other offices which who basically define our boundaries, like Kibo Office, which we call the Kenya International Boundary Office. Because as you are aware, we had a boundary issue with Somalia. So those are the people who will tell us exactly where the beacons, when it comes to the boundary between Kenya and Somalia, are in terms of the offshore. So then we have the tertiary rift basin, which basically has 12 blocks. And then we have the Anza basin, which has 6 blocks. And lastly, we have the Mandera basin, which has 3 blocks. So the upstream rights administration regulations basically defines on how those blocks are to be licensed, the procedures to be used. We can basically have bidding rounds whereby we put out blocks out there and potential investors will bid for them, of course, based on the data that we provided. And I have to inform the team that we were planning to do a bidding round through our ministry of 10 blocks, 8 premium blocks along the Lamu Basin, and 2 blocks along the Anza Basin, sometimes this year. But of course, because the legal framework has to be in place, that has been delayed. It was supposed to be in September, but we are hoping that before the end of the year, we'll have that licensing round announced. Or if it's not possible, we can do it early next year. So we can have bidding rounds, or we can have, we are now working towards revising the Petroleum Act 2019 so that we can basically also include the aspect of direct negotiations. Because as you are aware that with this energy transition story, we've had competing interests when it comes to capital, and sometimes subjecting big companies who are basically renowned in the world to direct negotiations. Some of the to bidding rounds. Sorry, some of them do not basically like it, and they normally like going through other means like direct negotiations, where they just come and state what they have, then they can negotiate with the government, and if basically if they cannot agree on certain terms, then they walk away and go to other prospective blocks or some other prospective regions. So that is on the upstream rights administration. So the next regulation was on the operation. So this is basically to ensure that we employ best practice to safeguard the environment and also ensure efficiency in the operations. And of course, that talks to licensing, issuance of permits, and all that. And it is us who will be issuing the permits and the non-exclusive exploration licenses. So you can either get that, or if you are interested basically in just obtaining data, or if you are interested in doing full development, Kenya operates on a production sharing contract module. And then, of course, the other one is on cost management, which basically deals with the aspect of how cost will be managed during upstream operations. That is, when we talk about the PSC, we have the cost oil capping, how much an investor can be able to recover in terms of cost oil, what percentage, and then we have the aspect of the profit share between government and the investor. That is all defined in those cost management regulations. And then the other ones to deal with crude oil storage and pipelines transportation. So these are basically midstream, just to, once you produce the oil, how you'll be able to transport it to maybe a refinery or a storage point awaiting export. And then the other one is on environment, health and safety. So that defines now the do's and don'ts to ensure that we safeguard our environment in terms of where the upstream activities are being carried out and where all this oil is passing to before it is exported or before it is used. And the other one is on land access. And land access deals with how, because once exploration happens and development has been planned, then of course there are people who might be displaced. So that talks to the whole essence of how that land can be acquired and how the people who are in those project affected persons can be resettled. Then the last one is on local content, and I think today I've seen the theme also revolves around local content. So this basically defines now how the country's citizenry can be able to benefit from the oil and gas exploration and development activities, noting that we may not have the technological know-how or may not have the capital to undertake the development. That's why we are inviting an external investor. So we need now to basically be able to ring fence certain jobs in terms of professional jobs and services, supply of goods and services to ensure that that money is beneficial to the citizens of the area the oil has been discovered and also the country at large. So basically, those are the regulations we've developed, and they are undergoing public participation in line with our constitution. And also, we also have another law called the Statutory Instruments Act, which is CAP 2A of 2013, which defines that when we are making a regulatory instrument or a law, that is a law or a guideline that is going to affect people, we must undertake public participation so that the affected persons have a chance of giving their views to that instrument being developed. So that in a nutshell is what we are doing. And once those regulations are ready, then I believe they'll be gazetted and we can be able now to progress to our bidding rounds. So currently we do have 5 licensed blocks. We have 3 blocks that have been licensed to, actually 4 blocks which have been licensed to Talo Kenya BV. But as you're aware that Talo Kenya BV recently signed a share purchase agreement with Gulf Energy Limited. And I think that transaction is almost progressing to a closure. And we are basically looking at the blocks that, 2 key blocks that had oil. Where discovery was done in March 2012. These are Block 10BB and Block 13T. We've recently renamed those blocks to T6 and T7. International nomenclature of naming blocks, we name them as per the basin. So initially, our blocks were not following that nomenclature. But I think recently the minister has gazetted the 50 blocks, the 50 new blocks in a gazette notice of 16th April 2025. And that's why now the 10BB has changed to T6 and the 13T has changed to T7. So in a nutshell, that is just the background of the Kenyan oil regulatory framework that we've been working on. Thank you.
Thank you, engineer, for that enlightening and quote about the policies that we have in Kenya. And just to also, I think you'll tell us if the data for those blocks are available to students or even researchers who want maybe to do projects that are in line with maybe upstream activities. To now, if we can shift to Dr. Riverson, I think you can also give us an opening remarks. And also, I know you're the champion of Africa energy sector, and you usually say that the future of Africa energy sector is bright. So do you agree by the term that the Africa energy sector is bright? Kindly.
Great. Thank you so much, and greetings to the session, Kenya session, on behalf of SP Africa and even international. My good brother, Engineer Edward, good to hear from you again. Um, and also to you, our moderator, Stephen. Well done for putting this together. Uh, like engineer mentioned, I think engineer has given so much background with the value chain, and even for you in Kenya, how the structure looks like. You know how policy wise things have changed and how things are advancing, and also shown more light into the future of the petroleum sector as far as career expectation is even concerned. You see, one of the greatest policies we've seen in Africa is local content, no doubt. You know, local content will drive three major things, and I always that the major thing it is capacity building. All right, local content is there to make sure that local expertise are driven, local expertise are developed, and also even exported. And I always cite this example that when Ghana discovered oil by Talu Oil and Cosmos, almost all the drilling engineers were from Nigeria. The reason being that we didn't have any expertise, and I would say that we had zero expertise because there was no program on oil and gas. What happened was that local content policy was enacted immediately, I think about 4 years after discovery, to make sure that the international companies employed and trained our good engineers. The reason why I also had an advantage to be where I am today, you know, through the same policy. We were trained back in Russia. So if I see that there is still possibility of we advancing, the oil and gas industry in Africa, then I think that local content will play a very, very significant role. Our policymakers are doing right, no doubt, but implementation is most of the issue, you know, and also sometimes loss of focus by our politicians. That being said, that is why there's regulatory bodies. So in Nigeria, you have NPRC. In Ghana, you have PC. Obviously, in Kenya, you have EPRA and then the other regulator for upstream or Empower Now. See, so and the second part of local content from the policy, apart from capacity building, has to do with making sure that local entities, local service companies also get a piece of the pie. That being said, local content developers and implementers, which are the regulators, always will find out that this task you are giving out as an IOC, is there any local company that could do the same work, even if it is a 10% higher than what the international companies will charge? They will allow you to do that. But upon implementing local content policy in certain African countries, I don't mention any name, right? We saw what we call fronting. These international companies will go behind a local person and front, and the local person will front on behalf of the international company. This is something that is so difficult to track, but it happens a lot. And that's the main disadvantage of bringing local content to Africa. Then the third one that is very equally important is the CSR part of local content. So I've mentioned what? I've mentioned capacity building by employing and training. And I've also mentioned capacity building in the local entities, make sure that the local companies are getting the jobs, also to provide services like catering, logistics, the bare minimum jobs that could be done by locals, right? And the third one is also, that Ghana brought a bit later, upon copying from Nigeria or learning from Nigeria is the percentage of revenue made by every company upstream. And I'm very specific upstream, not downstream. Okay. So for example, there's a fund, the local content fund. That's every company upon delivering a task or an assignment, you pay 1% of your revenue into the fund. Now, the purpose of the fund is to make sure that the regulator use part of the fund to do the first two things I mentioned: build capacity. All right, because when you go to the oil and gas industry, I always say that it is not just meant for people studying petroleum engineering. All right, there are a lot of jobs, rather, even for those with the handcrafts, the welding people, the welding engineers, the rock, the rough neft, the rough neck. If you go to the drilling platform, the monkey operators. These are people that are trained hands-on. So we use part of this money to train this hands-on level of the job, right? At the same time, investing in accelerating programs that will bring companies, local companies, up the scale to compete with the foreign companies, all right? So these are the three main pillars of local content. And when I say that Africa is bright, has a bright future, I say that with so much confidence that we do have, just like in Asia, our highest population being young professionals or the youth, you and I, including Engineer Edward. All right. The young ones are bright and they are more than those who are 70 years and above. The energy is there, the knowledge is there, the know-how is there also to make things work. All right. So I believe with the right setup of as a leadership, okay, getting the right leaders in our firms and getting an African content, getting an African policy that will drive sustainable support across the continent. I believe we can do better. Environmental stewardship and safety is non-negotiable. All right. In the extractive industry, whether mining, oil and gas, safety comes first. And for us who have worked in the mining industry before coming to oil and gas industry, you understand that the slogan for most of the mining companies are the safe way, the best way, every day. All right. And in the oil and gas industry, whether upstream, whether midstream, whether downstream, equally important, we take safety and environment measures very, very, very seriously, and even quality. All right. So this topic that you are bringing out today for us to discuss is very, very timely, and I'm happy to be on board. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Hopong, for that. And also to ask a follow-up question on the local content, because that one has been a case study, and actually some other countries in Africa are struggling with local content regulation. And we've seen a case of where a country, analysts are arguing that implementation of local content in Nigeria, it has fallen short of expectations, due to have some loopholes, maybe enforcement challenges. So are those allegations true? And what will you say to a country like Kenya now that we are trying to draft our local content regulation so that we do not follow, fall to the same pitfalls that local content in Africa are not working?
Right. That's a very beautiful question. Um, you know, when Ghana discovered crude oil and gas, we went to several countries to learn from them. There's nothing wrong going to countries who got it wrong to learn from what made them bad. Okay? I always say that there are three categories of personalities or people. The first category of people are those who learn from their own mistakes and not repeat them. The second group are those who learn from others' mistakes and not repeat them. However, There is also, I mean, a third group who will not learn from anybody's mistakes, not from their own mistakes, not from the other people's mistakes. There is something that Nigerians local content did best that you can pick from. The bad side becomes a learning curve for you as well. All right. Nigeria as a country has made billions of naira and dollars for implementing local content. It took them 45 years to implement local content. Yes. But what helped them is this. Let me tell you. When it got to the time for them to implement local content, they already had the capacity. They had already 45 years plus experience in the oil and gas industry. So implementing local content was very easy for them. Unlike countries like Ghana, that didn't have any expertise and still wanted things to be done fast. And that was wrong. So Ghana also went wrong with the implementation timeline, okay? Because you don't want a directional driller to be, I mean, so you don't want any Ghanaian to make a directional driller within 1 year. It's impossible. A directional driller should become a vertical driller, horizontal driller before becoming what? A directional driller. And it takes years. It's like it's same as medicine. You will not bring somebody from graduate school with medical certificate to come and operate your heart. It's the same thing, because the person needs to learn basic surgery, becomes a surgeon, becomes a specialist before becomes what? A specialist for heart. There are stages and it takes years. I don't like countries that want to speed up with local content, getting things be done locally. There are other side of local content, which I forgot to say, and I can say it now. Uganda is a case study for that. Local content also means that making sure that the products you are producing is used locally by local people, by building refineries, because there's demand. The engineer mentioned it. There's demand for crude oil products in Kenya. So I expect the first thing that Kenya government will do is to build a refinery if you don't have already, so that your crude oil will be refined. Apart from creating jobs for the young professionals like you and I, we are also adding value to the crude oil and making it available locally. All right. Now, going to capacity building. Assuming that Kenya wants to do it, please don't say that Nigeria has a bad history. Go there and learn from them. Go to Ghana. Go to Uganda is doing that. Uganda came to Ghana last year. Tanzania came to Ghana. We've also been to Kenya. I met engineer last year. We will always learn from each other. We will always have to learn from each other. You understand? Learning will never stop. Whether good practice, whether bad practice, it's all needed to make us good. All right. One thing I would say and end with this particular question is this. I also don't believe in copy and paste local content policy. I had a chance to review a country's local content policy. I'll not mention the country's name. And you could see that it's a true reflection of another country's local content policy. Please, no. You know your country. You know your need. One of the biggest factors that goes into local content development is population, economic growth, and other things, which differ from country to country. So there's no way I want to see a local content policy being mirrored from another country. It's so wrong. All right. So my advice to Kenya, as you're going to, I mean, by the grace of God, you're going to start drilling very soon, I hope. Local content policy should be driven by capacity building and getting local people being actively involved in the oil and gas activities. Thank you.
Very well, sir. I'm in fully agreement with your observation when it comes to matter of local content. And actually, here, you're saying that benchmarking in terms of learning of policies from another country or another regulatory body that does the same is actually key. Now, we are now looking to Africa as a whole. We have countries that want to start crude oil production. And then at the same time, we have the global theme about energy sustainability and environmental stewardship. Now, Engineer Kinyua, when we are speaking about
Energy sustainability, we are pushing ourselves to go towards green and more environmental friendly source of energy. Yet, a country like Kenya, we have our own resources. We have oil here in Kenya, and actually we are in the process of finalizing for production to start. Is Kenya going to become an OPEC member in your view? And because we've seen countries like Dubai building the economy using the black gold. When it comes now to other African countries, like now Kenya, as we are now about to start our production, um, do we really have that chance to also build our economy and also empower our people using the black gold?
Thank you, Stephen. And I think I first need to comment about local content. And I think Dr. Pong is spot on. And I believe we've also been to Ghana ourselves, and we visited the Petroleum Commission. And I think I have to commend West Africa. I think they have one of the best local contents. I think even Uganda, as much as we are saying in the region that Uganda has developed one of the most beautiful local content law, and if they will be able to implement that law, I think there'll be a lot of gains for the East African region. I believe West Africa has been leading on the front. In fact, I remember, if I'm not wrong, the Petroleum Commission told us that for the first time, there was an FPSO that was produced locally in Ghana. This is a floating production storage and offloading platform. And these are things that we normally see coming from outside. So you can see how tough the local content is, such that people can be able to produce such a complex equipment, and it works, and it's adopted by an international investor, and they continue using it in their production processes. And I believe looking at the whole landscape of how we've developed our regulation, we've tried to align it to what we learned in Ghana and what basically the Ugandans have done, that we have a HR component where we're looking at the skill set that we have within the country. For example, how many geologists do we have here who are basically graduated, experienced, and those ones who are also still in training? How many petroleum engineers do we have? How many other engineers like civil engineers who can work in those fields? Reservoir engineers. We are talking of drilling engineers, so facility engineers. So what is the register of that skill set, so that when an international investor comes here and says that he is employing 10 engineers who are expatriates from outside, do we have a local skill set that can fit in? And if we don't have that skill set, I like the example that Dr. Apong gave of somebody coming from medical school and going straight to the surgery room. How long would it take to train a qualified, an academically qualified engineer or a geologist so that they can fit in the system? And I think from the Ghanaian experience, they also have the aspect of attachment, whereby there's that relationship that has been created between industry and the technical schools, so that once somebody is in the university and they're going for attachment, then the companies are forced to take them over. And then, of course, there's a period that is given to expatriates so that they can train a local. And I think it is in the same line, exact line, that we've developed our laws and regulations. What I have to mention is that we also are supposed to be able to review the budget and work programs for contractors. And part of our review for those budgets and work programs, which they are supposed to give us every year, is to check what kind of goods and services they are buying, and what are the standards set for those goods and services. Can they be found locally? We don't want somebody coming here, they're importing drinking water from the UK, which is water that can be produced locally here and basically give employment to a certain cadre of people. So we are also looking at the aspect of the budgets and looking at the local content plan that they have. Basically, we are supposed to approve the local content plan that they basically gave us. So there are certain percentages of labor that they are supposed to get locally from year one up to maybe like the time where we'll have like almost 100% of some certain jobs being done by Kenyans. So it is us who will be able to monitor the stages a contractor goes through. Otherwise, if we leave the contractor, then they can basically do get everything from outside. And then unfortunately, these people, what they are afford of doing is transfer pricing. So if an engineer is supposed to be paid $2,000 or $3,000, basically then they'll pay the engineer 5 times of that, because that now also gets into a cost recovery in the economic model, and they are able to recoup some of these costs through having transfer pricing. So it's something that we have to be careful about and ensure that our local people basically utilize the skills they got from school, and that basically will help us build the local capacity. Part of what they are supposed to pay is training fees and also service fees. And there's a training fund that we are supposed to actualize as per the Act. And I believe once these regulations are put in place, then we'll be able to actualize that training fee, which will also come with things like research and development. There's a lot of artificial intelligence being used in the sector, especially for offshore drilling. And those are the things that we need to look at. Coming to your question about sustainability, of course, we are all aware that there have been all these attempts from the Kyoto Protocol, then coming to the Paris Conference of the Parties. We've had all these COPs where we're trying to reduce the amount of CO2 that we are getting into the atmosphere and all the other greenhouse gases, the likes of methane, so that we don't increase the temperature of the world above 1.5 degrees at pre-industrial levels. And I believe it's a good step in the right direction. And of course, it is something that every sector in the world should be able to try or strive towards, so that we can be able to reduce our carbon footprint. I know oil and gas is basically a carbon intensive industry, and we are also producing the same carbon that we are trying to avoid. However, there are certain safeguards that we put in place to ensure that as much as we are producing that carbon, we do it in a more sustainable manner. And I think one of the things that we are looking at as a country, and also in conformity to what other responsible jurisdictions are doing, is the aspect of achieving net zero carbon during the production of these hydrocarbons. Basically, we are looking at the carbon footprint. So part of the plan that you give us for development and production, which we call the field development plan, you should be able to demonstrate what you are doing in terms of achieving or towards your carbon zero and net zero, I mean, so that whatever you are using in terms of energy, can it offset part of what you are producing? And I think you've seen a lot of companies like Saudi Aramco basically are now getting into less carbon intensive projects like LPG. And Aramco's has set aside a lot of money to encourage uptake of LPG worldwide, where now they are looking at converting people from the use of biomass, which is also kind of carbon intensive, to the use of cleaner sources of energy for cooking, like LPG. So for our case, when we look at your field development plan, we are concerned about your sources of energy. For example, if you need external power, like Kenya, we know our grid is 92% green, having geothermal, having hydropower, some part of wind and solar. Our thermal component oscillates maybe between 10 and 15% on our last month. So if you were to utilize a grid, and we know, for example, in Turkana, where you'll be doing the drilling, you rely more on the wind power that is coming from Lake Turkana, or you rely more on grid power coming from Tarkwell Dam, of course, that basically goes towards reducing your carbon footprint. And one of the things we've told the contractor who is basically about to develop the oil, he has to do a very good carbon analysis to tell us what is the carbon footprints and the measures they are going to take so that at least we can balance off that carbon. In the field development plan, is a whole chapter that we call the environmental social governance, which is a requirement of many financiers, where we are looking at things like flaring. We don't basically allow flaring, for example, for our oil production activities, unless it is an emergency where you have to seek permission from ourselves as a regulator and also from NEMA before you do flaring. When you encounter any associated gas, you're supposed to re-inject it and maybe store it if you don't have an immediate plan for it. But I think what we are also looking at is things like waste handling and of course the project, the alternatives you'll have towards ensuring that you achieve what I was talking about, carbon zero and the net zero. We've seen big companies like E&I who have been able to do net zero projects. I think they've achieved it in Cote d'Ivoire, and I think they're working towards the same in the Congo as they do the LNG project in the Congo. So that is what we would basically encourage anybody who is doing drilling here and doing production, so that as much as we are trying to produce the same hydrocarbons, to me, hydrocarbons will be here for a long time. I think we've looked at the prospect or the projections companies like BP have done. We know that our daily consumption of oil in the world is about 102 million barrels per day. So they are looking at the 10-year projection from today until year 2035, even with all these sustainable stories and even with this alternative energy that we are talking about. And they have projected that if we will have probably a higher uptake of greener sources of energy, then we might reduce our consumption per day by like 20 million barrels. So we'll be around 80 million barrels. And that tells you that oil usage is here to stay. We've not found a real alternative. And that's why you've seen a lot of banks, JP Morgans of this world, who are running away from funding oil and gas projects. They've looked at the reality of transition and they've come to the realization that it may not be immediately be realized because the alternative we are looking at is a bit shaky. It's not something stable. Oil and gas so will be able to carry the world a longer time. I think what we'll have to check is that balance of the carbon we are producing vis-a-vis what we can be able to use as alternative energy to balance it off. So I believe we still have a chance. We were given a lifeline by the current president of the US. I think when he came in, he said, "Drill, baby, drill." There's a song that we've been singing all over in conferences. But the question we should ask ourselves, which was asked by one of my colleagues, is that how long will this window last? Because financials have just come back because that space has been opened up. But I think we should utilize this chance and be able to roll out our production as fast as possible, make it sustainable. And of course, even in technology wise, the people who are using these products, like the engine manufacturers, they should make the engines more efficient. If you realize that a vehicle engine could be only like 35% efficient, can it be made like 60% efficient so that we'll waste less of the energy that is coming in terms of hydrocarbon, and that will make us be able to use it more sustainably for a longer period of time. Thank you.
Steve, kindly unmute. Unmute kindly.
Oh, sorry for that. Um,
To Engineer Kenya, I love how you addressed the key issue, and actually saying that the upstream project is not a hot air project and actually is here to serve Kenyans. And actually the fact that EPRA as a regulator is positioning itself with the Kenya National Climate Change Action Plan and the 2030 net zero ambition to be able to make sure that the environment is safe for everyone. To Engineer Opong, if I may throw this to you. We have the term energy mix, and actually you're trying to harmonize all our energy resources and come up with and be able to grow energy field. How can you say Africa can achieve this? Dr. Riverson?
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was muted.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, sorry about that. So what I'm saying is that God, in His own wisdom, blessed Africa with natural resources. All right. God has blessed us with all natural resources that we need. All the heavy metals. I just flew in from Pretoria to Accra today, and I saw a platinum mine for the first time. Platinum, you know, the highest coal reserve in South Africa, geothermal, Kenya, Tanzania, oil and gas everywhere, coal. I mean, diamond, gold. Mention it. And if you ask yourself what has made or what has been made out of these, there's nothing to write home about. For me, except of Kenya's ability to utilize its geothermal, probably because it's not being able to, we cannot export geothermal energy. That's why you guys are using it. If there was any possibility of exporting geothermal energy, probably you didn't have had it. 90% of our natural resources that we produce in Africa are exported in its raw state. You can forgive yourself with gold, platinum, and the metals, no problem. But for crude oil, I find difficult to forgive us. I find difficult to forgive our leaders because there's demand for it. You know, there is demand for it. Ghana alone imported over 6 billion liters of crude oil product last year, and we import everything we produce offshore in this country, out of the country. So when we talk about the energy mix, the energy mix today is still heavily dominated by hydrocarbons. And hydrocarbon here, I mean coal, crude oil, and gas. Thanks be to God once again, natural gas has now been named as what? Transition fuel, which is good for 3 reasons. The fact that it's affordable, is cleaner, and is available, makes it a very lucrative fuel to look at in the energy mix, which we have in abundance in the continent. All right. Now think about it. It's not as if there's no demand for natural gas within Africa continent. But when the gas from Russia to Europe was cut, the next available source of gas was Nigeria in Africa. Let me put that way. So a pipeline is being constructed from Nigeria to Morocco to Europe. And again, it's not as if Africans don't need this gas. We need it. You know, if natural gas has been termed as transition fuel, why don't we heavily depend and solely utilize it to meet the demand? And it's not as if we can live without crude oil. Also, let me say this: there is no country today on this planet with the highest or the biggest capacity of power from coal than China. At the same time, there's no country with the highest solar panel capacity than China does. China, for me, is the only country that understand that's energy sustainability mix. To China, energy sustainability is any form of energy that's available for the first time. First of all, it's accessible, I can have it, and also it's affordable. China believes in this sustainable energy so much in order to develop its industry. Okay, that is why there is so much high industrialization in China. Imagine that all the source of energy that you are exporting in its raw state were used in Ghana, so we were used in Africa. With the labor that we have, that's the young professionals and the youth that are not unemployed today, where would we go? Where would we be as a continent? We will be an exporting continent of industry. We will export everything out of this continent in this perfect stage, and everybody will have work. Today, as we speak, millions of people don't have accessibility to electricity. Even people who have accessible electricity, they cannot afford because it's not cheap. So for me, the trilemma should be, first of all, an available energy, an accessible energy, and equally important, affordable energy. Thank you.
Thank you for that. You're talking about availability, accessibility. Yeah, and actually to allude on that, Kenya is fortunate enough to have a coal deposit, to have geothermal, we have potential gas reservoirs, we have crude, we have metals. Actually, we have every reason to develop our economy. And thanks that now we have a regulator here. I know everything is all set. And to our audience, because of time factor, I would love you to kindly drop your questions at the chat, and also I'll be giving a chance or two to people to ask their questions. There is a question here for you, Engineer Kinywa, and this question is seeking your explanation on how different government agencies such as EPRA, NEMA, and Ministry coordinates reform in matter policies. Thanks.
Thank you, Stephen. So when it comes to regulating the sector and also dispensing policy, we do not work alone. We work in conjunction with other government institutions. I think I'll single out NEMA because we work very closely with NEMA in terms of ensuring that projects, when you do an environmental social impact assessment for a project, for example, I'll give the one for the upstream project and the one for the proposed Lamu, Lokicha Lamu crude oil pipeline LL Corp. Basically, that report, once it is done by expert, there are 5 copies of that report that are taken to NEMA. So one copy of that report comes to us. There are copies that is a copy that will go to another ministry like Ministry of Water, Lands, so that they can be able to give comments. So on our side, basically what we're supposed to do is to look at the technical standards that we have and any technical guidelines that we have on the design, on the proposed design, and how that design will be able to affect the environment in terms of the safety of our waterways, in terms of the safety of the ambient air, in terms of the safety of the vegetation, the soils, the flora, and the fauna. So we basically look at the design and the safety distances that have been stipulated and the kind of technology that is will be employed and how safe it is, and whether there are any mitigating measures to ensure that in case of failure of that technology, that primary containment will not be lost for the product either being produced or transported. So once we give them our comments, it's only at that point that being a lead agency for NEMA that they can be able to issue an environmental social impact assessment license. So we also do work very closely with the Directorate of Occupational Safety and Health Services on matters to do with safety. We know basically, as Dr. Opon said, that safety cannot be gainsaid in this industry. A small mistake can really cost. We are aware of what happened at Macedon in the Gulf of America now, where a small, a simple component like a blowout preventer failed, and it is suspected that there was a regulatory failure because regulators used to visit that Macondo well, and they were giving it a big clean bill of health. But once that blowout preventer failed, you see the kind of oil that was spilled in the Gulf of Mexico, the previous Gulf of America. So we do work very closely with the people who implement OSHA, who is basically the Directorate of Occupational Safety and Health Services. Then, of course, we do work very well with the Kenya Bureau of Standards because they are the custodians of the standards. And we are like their lead agent in terms of facilities, equipment, and product standards. So that is just how to demonstrate how closely that government needs to work. And when it comes to oil production, like for example, when we are producing oil in South Lokichal Basin, this is the two blocks I talked about. That oil will require water injection because it's a waxy kind of crude. So we need water to produce that oil. So definitely we'll work with the Ministry of Agriculture, of Water and Sanitation, because they're the ones who provide the water. Then there's a Ministry of Lands because of the issue of land acquisition, National Land Commission. So it's a whole government approach. And where we require funds like for compulsory acquisition of land, then the National Treasury basically comes in hand. So that is to mean that oil production must be a whole government approach. It can't be one ministry. And of course, we require security for the field. So the Ministry of Interior will come in seamlessly. We require road or rail transport, pipeline transport. If you are exporting, you will require a port, and that is the Ministry of Transport. So there are many work streams that have been formed towards actualizing that project. Thank you.
Thank you for that exposition. And also, there is another question on we on local content. Yeah, you're saying that we'll have maybe a database where all the expertise will be will be put there. And then is this regulated by EPRA, or is it done by Ministry of Energy and Petroleum?
So thank you for that question. So that will basically fall under us as EPRA, and we are just mirroring what our counterparts have done elsewhere, like the Petroleum Commission of Ghana. I know they have different subcommittees which look at the local content aspect, and this one of looking at the skill set, I think they call it the HR, the Human Resource Subcommittee, where basically they have a database for all the professionals in the country who matter in oil and gas, geologists, could it be welders, could it, and they do monitor to see the utilization of that skill set when it comes to the actual production process of oil. And of course, they also have like procurement committees where they are looking at what are the procurement plans or what are the plans, are the goods and services that the contractor is going to procure maybe in a certain year. Basically, they get these plans in advance. For example, if they are looking at 2026, then by this, towards the end of this year, they must have received the plans and evaluated them. And basically what they are looking at when they are looking at the procurement plans, for example, they are looking at what are these goods that will come from outside. If, for example, it's lifting services, is it that Kenya doesn't have cranes that meet the standards that are required? So, and then we ask ourselves, what are these standards? Because again, the contractor can set the standards so high that, for example, if there's a requirement for a particular profession, just to give an example, to speak in Greek or to speak in some other funny language which we don't teach here, is that a barrier to entry? Can that contractor be, can that skill set be requested to be speaking in a language that is domiciled in Kenya, like English, for example? Why not? So those are the things that we basically are looking forward to be evaluating. So just to answer that question in short, yes, we'll be maintaining that database. We are very much concerned about the geologists we are churning out of our universities. Where are they supposed to go? Like, for example, geology, unless you practice in those fields, where else can you go and practice? So it's a way of absorbing that skill set. Thank you.
Thank you for that, engineer. When it comes to sustainability, Dr. Riverson, do you think biomass gasification is an alternative to coal and HFO, considering that as a source of clean energy source? And because actually there is no regulation in this sector, as more industry are heading in that direction with regards to furnace and boilers, let's say the manufacturing process. Do you think that biomass gasification is the key, and can that be adopted?
Yes, I think the answer is a very simple yes. In Ghana now we have a biomass committee that's it under the energy ministry. We are looking at it as a sustainable replacement to charcoal, like you mentioned, and HFO. But getting the standards right across Africa is another question, because today, as we speak, even the diesel specification between Nigeria and Ghana are different, and we are neighboring countries. The specification, of fuel across the continent differ from each other. But talking about biofuel, yes, it's a very powerful discussion now that we are having, and we're looking at how best we can produce it cheaply and make it available to replace the traditional, charcoal, which obviously affects afforestation and also carbon net zero footprint. So I don't know what Kenya is doing about it, but in Ghana we have taken it very serious, and I believe in the next 2 years we have our framework fully implemented. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think we in Kenya, we've seen companies that are doing coal gasification, and actually they're saying it's cheaper source of energy. And in the coal gasification process, they're producing what we call the syngas, which they're using to heat the boilers. And actually, that whole technology, it makes sure there are no coal emission to the environment. And I believe as we continue with the upstream thing, even with the exploitation of maybe coal and also alternative biomass, that will form a key energy source in our manufacturing process. So to Dr. Pong, there is a person who is asking if Ghana currently have policies or frameworks in place for the repurposing of abandoned oil and gas well. For example, for geothermal energy, utilization of carbon capture and storage. And what lesson could Kenya and other African countries draw from this experience? Thank you.
You mean abandoned reserves?
Yes. Yes, repurposing of abandoned oil and gas wells.
Okay, to be a carbon capture storage system, right?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So in 2016, I did a presentation in Bangkok, Thailand. That's IPTC on CCUS. Right about now that it has become a very topical discussion to solve net zero and all that. Let me also say that is a solution that has been in the oil and gas space for quite a number of reasons. Okay, the first reason is what you've mentioned, where we deploy depleted reserves, okay, to store carbon dioxide, okay, and then the second one also is to liquefy this carbon and inject it into the well to increase what production rate, just as been done in UAE now by ADNOC. ADNOC has a technology today near the steel producing companies, the industrial area of Abu Dhabi. They extract all the carbon dioxide in the air, and now they inject it into the well to promote what? To increase the pressure, increasing the flows of production. So for these two reasons, we had this CCUS. It has even become more important now that we are talking about energy transition, that we cannot transition easily like that. So the mitigation method of CCUS has become topical, like I mentioned. So yes, why not? Depleted reserves can easily be used for that. In Ghana now, we don't have any depleted reserves. Unfortunately, we have only 3 fields that are working now, and they are all within their 10 to 12 years. So I think after 25 years or 30 years, we can call them depleted or marginal field. But until that, we don't have that yet. Any CCU that we're going to capture needs to be used or stored. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that. That's a great exposition today, and we are gladly to have the two of the great minds in the field. And now, as we approach the end of this session, I'd love to invite our speakers to give us closing remarks. Factoring that today's technical session, we have majority who are young professions and also students in the different fields and also in oil and gas. What key takeaway, and as you give your closing remarks, could you kindly share with the students as they prepare for taking the profession to be profession in the real world? We start with you, Dr. Riverson.
Okay, thank you. Once again, I think I will thank you for giving us the opportunity to have this discussion with you. East Africa is going to see a new dilemma in the energy space, and I'll be very honest with you. Looking at what is happening within the corridors of Uganda, Tanzania, and obviously the port of Dodoma, the port of Mombasa, as far as import is concerned. It is timely because the industry is going to grow. Young professionals with the right leadership mentality are going to be needed to utilize these pipelines that are being built. All the oil and gas activities are going to happen, and I'm very happy with the fact that yes, we still need oil and gas, but we need to implement ESG goals in order to reduce the emission or even put it to be zero entirely, like engineer mentioned. We will need the brain and mind of you people to achieve this. Some of us don't have time for research anymore. It is your time. You have the time now with less burden to give us the solutions that we need. And one thing I can say is that whatever support that SPE can give, we are here to make sure it works. And I believe that the Kenyan government is also youth proven. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, and you are. We thank you for sharing that with us. As we close, as we give your closing remark, Engineer Kenywa, I'm sure you've really encountered our aggressive young engineers in the field. Even as you go to these activities, you've seen them coming to you and telling you, we need to be in the field. We need you as a regulator to make it easy for us to be in the field, to practice, to share our experience, and also to be able to grow. What should you have to say to them today?
Thanks, Stephen, and thanks, Dr. Pong. I think it was a pleasure sharing a platform with you. I think I'll start my closing remarks by, I think, what Dr. Pong had previously mentioned, that I think as much as we are focusing our minds towards ensuring net zero and all these transition items, I think we need first to focus on the aspect of energy security. And I think by mentioning that, I just go to the example you've given, Stephen, on conversion of coal to syngas. And of course, just to mention that coal is also being used very extensively in the cement industry. If I give you the statistics, we've just started a coal department within EPRA, because one of the things that we are supposed to regulate is a coal-based coal bed methane and also coal itself. We are consuming about 7,000 tons of coal in a day. And if you multiply that by the number of days in a year, 365 days, you find that the coal consumption in Kenya could outstrip the gasoline consumption, or the what you call petrol. Where is this coal coming from? All this coal is being imported from Tanzania here.
Tanzania.
It's also part of it is coming from South Africa, but a majority of it comes from Tanzania. So we are asking ourselves basically, if we are importing all that coal and we have millions of tons sitting in our Mui basin, what are we doing about it? So, and I think Dr. Opong has basically said that we are blessed with resources, but we are not utilizing those resources. Africa has always been touted as a dark continent. They've always given this example that if you look at a Google map of the sky at night and the ground below, you'll find that Africa is a darkest continent. Europe is very light. When you look at it, when America is dark, this darkness in America, the lights are on everywhere. But in Africa, you see just sparingly some light here, some light there. A whole percentage of it is dark. So what are we doing about it with all the oil deposits we have, with all the coal deposits that we have? So should we first chase transition, or should we first chase energy security? I think I'm just posing a rhetoric question, bearing in mind that out of all the global emissions, I think only 3% is coming out of Africa. But huge percentages are coming from China, the industrial zone. Huge percentages are coming from elsewhere. So I think we need first to ask ourselves, even as we pursue the aspect of that transition, what are we transitioning from? And are we at a position whereby we have achieved energy security, such that now we can go to ask ourselves that we can be able to transition? I think going to the question that you raised around the young minds that we have in the room, I believe that countries are built from such minds and through research and development. And I'll give a good example from the oil extraction that we've been doing across the world, in many jurisdictions across the world. The recovery factors of any discovery is usually at maximum 30 to 35%. So even using enhanced oil recovery systems, you are only able to achieve maximum maybe 35%. 65% of that oil still remains in the ground. So what we are asking ourselves is that, is it the end of technology? I don't think it is. I think we should task our young minds more and ask ourselves, how can we be able to make the recovery processes more efficient, even as we look at having less carbon footprint energy sources. So whatever resources we have and the discoveries that we have, if, for example, we've said in Kenya, we have a stock tank oil initially in place of about 2.85 billion barrels, with maybe the proven resources being around 585 million barrels. So if we start a recovery process, are we going to recover 30% of the 585, or are we going to recover maybe something greater than that? So I think there's room for a lot of research in terms of technology, and I think we should not shy away. I always say that mobile money transfer was invented here, even if the accolades went elsewhere. And this is something that has been transactioning billions of cash. I don't think in Kenya we I don't remember even the last time I used my ATM card or my bank card. In fact, last time I was told to swipe it somewhere. I had to call the bank to get the PIN number, because we are used to the mobile money transfer, like it has become a normal way of life. So if we can be able to discover such a system, which even banks have embraced with their sophisticated system in terms of even the central bank, the regulator itself, then why can't we do it in terms of technology, both onshore and offshore? And I think we have enough minds that can work on research, be able to develop new systems which can be adopted across the world. So I would just encourage people, and we normally say things like Facebook were discovered by university students. You get sometimes people discover things by accident. So as much as you indulge yourself into research and development, who knows, you might be the next Mark Zuckerberg in the oil industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Engineer Kenya, for that. I couldn't agree with you more. It's about creating a pipeline for competent professions who can manage our resources responsibly and champion environmental stewardship and contribute to a safe and more inclusive future for Kenya and Africa at large. This will bring our technical session today to an end. Before that, let me just take this moment to sincerely thank Engineer Kinywa and also Dr. Riverson because of the resourceful information they have shared with us tonight. Actually, just to comment, Engineer Kenya is really a busy man, and actually getting his time to be here with us is such a noble experience. We really appreciate as a society, and this is what Nairobi section, SP Nairobi section does, and actually SP as a whole. We try to connect professions and also the industry via such a forum, and that's why I invite you to our to be in the lookout. To I've shared, as you can see on your screen, we have the SP Africa Annual Student Conference that is going to take place in 2026. This will be the largest SP Africa Annual Student Congress coming year. And the theme will be building a sustainable energy future for Africa, people, innovation, and technology. Actually, we're just trying to gather to bring those bright minds and form a better energy world because all of us are in the energy field, and we're trying to find that position of where can we best put our knowledge and actually grow our profession. Thank you all. Actually, I also give a special appreciation to students who have joined from Tanzania and also UG, Uganda. And I also have, I know we have also a representative from Ghana. Thank you all for joining to tonight's technical session. We look forward for future collaboration in the same. Be in the lookout. We usually share such session notification on our pages. Be in the lookout for our next technical session. This will bring our technical session today to an end. Thank you all for coming. Like I can't cease to use that word thank you, because this is really noble for us. We've really learned from the great minds about the energy, and yeah, thank you all for coming. You're now you can now leave at your pleasure. See you soon in our next technical session. Thank you all.